Today we're going to unlock one of the most powerful frameworks for guitar players, and that's the cage system. If you've ever wondered how to move beyond, basic chords and move around the fretboard, Caged really helps you understand chords, scales, and how solos connect. To start with, the core concept is that playing down here, when we first learned guitar, this is my C, this is my D, my E, my A. These are what we think of as chords, but really they're not chords, they're actually a shape. Each shape can be adapted into minor versions, so we've got the A here, it becomes the A minor, we've got the E, it becomes the E minor, but they are shapes. But before we fully jump into the cage system, let's see how a capo helps you understand how chords actually work. So here's my A. Play it however you want. But if I want to play an A sharp, if I put the capo on here, same exact shape. So I'm playing an A shape, but that's no longer an A. A shape, different chord, because I've moved where the nut is using this capo. And so now this is actually an A sharp. And so if I move it one more time, I'm actually playing a B. I'm using an A shape, but playing a B. Guess what? We can go up the entire fretboard. Here I'm playing a C with my A shape. Here I'm playing my C sharp. Guess where I'm going to go? I'm going to go up the entire fretboard. Here I'm playing a D using my A shape. When you start thinking of the chords as shapes, there's my D sharp, playing with an A shape. Here's my E. Here's my F. Starting to get a little hard to use all my three fingers. I'm just going to use my finger like that. The capo is basically acting as a movable nut. It's pushing everything up one fret while letting me keep the same easy shape under my fingers. So whether we move the chord with a capo or we move it with our hand, we're playing the same shape. Higher up the fretboard and we've got a new chord. Same chord shape, but a new chord. So what are caged shapes? So caged shapes essentially do exactly the same thing. So if I take my A shape here, I can use my other finger back here to play the bar chord. So there's my A sharp, using an A shape. B, C, C sharp, D, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and back to my A again. So I have my capo right here, and I've got my one movable shape. But I've got 5 of these open chords, C, A, G, E, and my D. And guess what that spells? And so there's 5 major chords which you can play at the open, in the open position. But I've got 7 open natural major chords. We have A, we don't have B, we have C, we have D, we have E, we don't have F, and we have G. So the B and the F we don't know how to play. That's where the cage system comes in. Think of it like Shakespeare's famous line, to be or not to be. If we want it to be, we actually have to play a B chord by sliding up an A. We take the A shape and we just slide it up 2 frets and suddenly we've got a B chord. That's the magic of movable shapes. And so we can't actually play all of our natural chords without having these movable shapes. So that's the magic of the caged movable shapes. The entire cage system is built from those 5 chord shapes I just mentioned. And did you know that if you take those 5 letters, there's 120 possible words we could get. So if you did an anagram of those 5 letters, there's 120 possible letter combinations. Only 2 of them form an actual English word. And those 2 words are cage and caged. So it's crazy, crazy coincidence that caged can be spelt from those 5 notes. And guess what is really, really important about the caged name is that it actually tells you the position of the next chord. So here I have a C. And what's important about a chord is typically knowing where its root is. So here my root is on the A string. So you got A, A sharp, B, C. There's my C root right here. So the next chord in caged is A. And so using that as my root, there's my A shape. So caged not only tells you what movable chords there are, but it tells you the order that they come in. So it's kind of the most perfect coincidence for guitarists that we have a English word, caged, and it tells us the order that the chords come in. Imagine if it had come out saying something like Gedka or something like that. Not nearly as catchy. So I'm going to go caged in order. We've got C. And from this root here, we're going to play C. But this is using the A shape, so C, A. Now the next root is up here. Big stretch for me. There's my G shape, so C, A, G. Next place I can play my C right here, and that's using my E shape. That's this shape down here. This is it right up here. I'm playing a C, but I'm using an E shape. And then lastly, you guessed it, it's the D shape. So C, A, G, big stretch for me, E, and then the D shape right down here. So caged, 5 chords, it tells you exactly the sequence that they occur. That's the kind of real magic. And there's only 2 words, cadge and cage, that could come from those notes. So we got really lucky. So let's start with something simple, power chords. Power chords are really just stripped down versions of full chords. Here's my E shape, slid up. To do a power chord, all I'm doing is playing the root note, the 5th, and the root note again. So that, just a snippet of that. I'm not bothering to put all my fingers down. I could do it with just the 3 fingers, so. But it's a snippet of a cage chord off the A string. There's my A root, so there's a C power chord. Don't know what I'm playing, but easy to play. Put some distortion on and you can be playing all over the neck. And they sound really great in rock and punk, and I'm sure you've heard their sounds everywhere else. So cage doesn't just help with chords, it also makes scales much easier. So if you think about where my root is, that's coming out of this root on the A string. But here's my root over here. So that's my E shape right here. This is the scale that comes out of that E shape. So it helps root your scales based around which chord you are playing. So you can also use it for rhythm guitar. I could play that in any key because those are all movable shapes. So there, move it down 1. Move it here. If you're a beginner guitarist, you've probably heard of triads. And the first thought you had was, oh my God, triads are for advanced players. They're not. They're really actually a great tool for beginners, and they set you up on your whole musical progression. So I'm going to share some triads, 1 or 2 tricks and how you might use them. So first we need to understand what a triad is. Now, triad is essentially the most basic chord on the planet. If I play a G, that is a triad, but I'm actually playing extra notes. I'm like doing more work than I need to do. So a triad is the 1, the 3, and the 5 of a chord, and it's the basic chord. So a major chord is the 1, major third, and a fifth. And so that's all you need to play. So 3 notes, 3 fingers. That's the beauty about triads. So if you have a hard time playing a G, or you don't want to, start barring and using every single string, that's where triads can be like ease you into kind of playing more interesting. There's a D sharp. Have you ever played that? Probably not, because it's kind of hard to finger if you're not doing a triad. So triads are really great for kind of sneaking you into harder chords. And when you're playing with other people, there's a lot of stuff going on. So if you're playing a full chord, that's just a lot to be happening. Whereas if you're just playing a triad, there's the G triad right there. You could be delicately going above what's already happening. So I've talked a lot, but here's a triad here. I'm going to play an A triad. And so triads, again, are 3 notes. For a major triad, it's a 1, the 3, and the 5. So just remember 1, 3, 5. I'm going to play an A chord. And if you look at my fingers, I'm just going to concentrate on the notes that are being held down, so the notes that are being fretted. Essentially, that is one of the 3 major triads on these 3 strings, which would be the D, G, and the B string. So there's my probably simplest triad. I could hold it down with however you like to hold down your A's. And so in that triad, guess what there are? There's the 1, there's the 3, and there's the 5. One of the first things you probably want to start thinking about with the triad is, where's the root? And so in an A, well, when I play an A chord, I know my open A string is the root. I know that this is another A because it's the octave of there. So it's the middle of the 3 notes of this triad is the root. So that's the first thing I'd want to know. So I think about it as the A. So there's my A sharp. And so there's my A sharp triad. There's my B. So there's my B triad. There's my C. And so there's my C triad. So I think about it in relation to what chord is the triad coming from. So I think about it coming from this A. And so I can think about this root is probably easiest for me because those are the first strings you learn is the E and the A string. So it's just easier for me to think of what the root of the triad is for this particular chord. So A, A sharp, B, C, and so on, all the way up here. And so why is that interesting? I could play a very straightforward 1-4-5 progression. I think about A, B, C, D, and E. So the D and the E are the 4 and the 5. So normally I might play it A. So that's one way it could sound. But I could slide it up and play a D and play an E. So it sounds very different. Same exact chords. I'm just playing the triads of those chords, but I'm playing it in different positions. And you could start to have little effects. So you could slide up from the D to the E. I could hammer on from the D to the E. And back down to the A. So you can start doing slightly different things with your triad. Just fun to play with because I'm not playing, it's not heavy sound, it's just a nice light sound. So A, D, E, whereas if I'm playing with triads, A, and that's just one of my 3 triads on those particular strings. So I'd have to think about what the next triad is. Here's my next A. Slightly different, it's coming out of what I would call the E chord. So I'm playing the same strings again, but it's this shape. There's an E, there's an F, there's an F sharp, G, and there's my A again. And then the very last shape for an A is up here. So these are the 3 triads on those middle strings. This shape, and this shape. And you'll find those in your cheat sheets for that string grouping, which is D, G, and B. And these shapes are inversions, but I wouldn't necessarily think about them that way because you're not really playing the bass on them, even though you want to know where the root note is. Why are triads beginner friendly? And why should you use them? So triads have a reputation for being a kind of advanced technique, and that's probably because your fingers are away from the nut. So most people learn how to play here, but you're only playing 3 notes. So that's the number one reason to think about triads, is you only have to hold down 3 strings. And so it's a lot easier in your fingers and easier to kind of to play around. And also this, I'm only playing the middle 3 strings, but it's shorthand for this. So you saw I've got to come around and bar the whole thing. So there's my A. So I can do more with stuff, I can get the bass in it, but it's just so easy to play this with my 3 fingers. There's the same A. It's the same fingers, but I'm only playing it with 3 fingers. So you only have 3 notes to play. It's easier to play. They help you move up the neck. So there's my A, there's my D, there's my E. So I didn't really need to even think about it. I'm just moving up the neck, and because I don't have to bar, I don't have to kind of reach around, it's just kind of easy to play. Whoa, it's just easier to play. Potentially faster chord changes. I'm not the greatest, but that's a very easy thing to do, kind of just to go from your 5 to the 4. They're also really good for learning the fretboard, because you have to start kind of thinking about what are the notes in the E string, what are the notes in the A string, how do I identify what this chord is. One of my favorite exercises is to put a bass note on there. So if I'm playing in D, then right above these 3 strings, right here, is the D. So I can add the root note, which is the D. So you can start to make it a little bit more musical and start to have more fun with kind of messing around with the triad. Very little finger movements. Another kind of beauty about triads, if you start finding the triad which involves the least movement. So from this A, I'm going to this D, very little. And you can imagine that's licks to start coming out of these little triad shapes. Also a fun thing to do is try and figure out little triad riffs. So I'm going to go back to this A shape, play a D here. So there's my D, and the other triad, or another triad on these 3 string groups, is this shape. That is the G. Here's the A. There's very little movement for that 1, 4, 5, but I could make a little riff from it by hammering on. That's quite difficult to do in full chords, but not too difficult to do in triads, because all you're doing is concentrating on 3 strings. I tend to finger pick, but it's easy to just pick all 3 strings at the same time, or finger pick. So away you can go with triads. If you want to learn other guitar tricks and tips and general music theory for absolutely free, go to play.noisyclan.com and we'll help you play more. And subscribe for more videos like this. We're going to talk about triads, and in particular we're going to do some exercises, and we're going to talk about these 3 strings along the top, the treble strings of your guitar. There's the easiest place to play your triads. Both to recognize the triad shapes, but also just to finger and generally have fun with. So the first shape we're going to look at is this D shape, which can be moved anywhere, but in this position it is a D. And the reason we know it's a D is that the root note in this triad, because every triad contains a 1, a 3, and a 5. That's the essential notes of a triad, the 1, 3, 5, the basic major chord. So here we go, there's my D, because this note is D. If I play my open D string, same note. Now we've got an A here, same as my open string, A note, and then on the bottom we have an F sharp. So D root. My 3 is the F sharp, and A is my 5. So 1, 3, 5. If I play it in this position, it's a D flat or a C sharp. If I play it here, pretend with my fingers, that's a C, C sharp, D. And it's all being decided by the string, because this is my root note. So D flat, this is my C note, and then this is B. So very important to know where the root of your triad is. Now the easiest thing to do, because we have this open D, is just to let it ring out. That's my triad. That doesn't sound so good because it's not in the key of D. But we can just do that exercise. Get used to moving in the shape. All intestine sounds. Well, that sounds interesting. That sounds like it's it sounds like it's actually part of this key. So we're in the key of D. And that's the first chord that kind of fit. And that's because this is the 4, this is the G. So D, E, F, G, right there. So that's the 4 of the key of D. So 1. And we can keep going. So we can go, doesn't sound so great. Well, that sounds pretty good. And guess why? Because that's 4, this is your 5 chord. So we've got the D, the 4, which is the G, and the 5, which is the A. So now we've got 3 chords we can mess around with. And I'm finger picking right now, but you can strum. It's cool because this D, you know, even if you're aiming for your bottom 3 strings, you'll often just catch that 4th string, but because it's the open D, you can hit it without having a problem. 1 chord, the G, which is the 4, and the 5. Every song is typically a 1-4-5 progression. So you're very familiar with this kind of sound, and we're using one triad shape to play it. So it's a fun way to practice just moving that triad shape up and down. Out the key, in the key, in the key. So, great exercise to get used to playing that very first triad. Now we're going to try the second shape. And the second shape is based out of this chord shape, which is the, right here, it's the G. So I'm going to call it the G shape. But actually here, it's F. Here it's E. And the triad we're going to be interested in is the bottom 3 strings. So I'm going to take these fingers off. And you'll see that it's this string, this string, and this string. So there's my G. And where's the root? The root is on this string, the lower string. So of the 3 triads of these bottom 3 strings, each one has the root in a different string. So the B string here is giving the root for this D shape, and the high E string is giving the root note for this G shape. So this is a G, this is an F, G, G flat, F, E, because this note is E. It's important to note where your root note is. G. So it can repeat exactly the same chord progression from before, being in the key of D. Bum. So that is 1, 4, 5. But now we can add in our second triad shape. So you see how you have to move a lot less. All with those two triad shapes. And we're going to bring in the last triad shape. And the last triad shape is based off this A. And of course we're talking about the top 3 strings, and so here it's an A. And the root is right here on this G string. This is A. This is C sharp, and this is E. If we slide it forward, we have to put our finger down. This is A sharp. This is B. This is C. Shall we sound it out? This is part of this if I hold the whole A shape down. So again, this is my root note. So this is C, C sharp. Hey, we've just found the D. So there's our 3 triads based on where the root note is on these 3 strings. So root note, that shape. Root note for the A shape, and root note for the G shape. Okay, so 1, 4, 5, 1. I really want you to think outside the box. So what I want you to think about is the smallest scale that we can put under our fingers, which isn't just going up the fret. And so I'm going to put that shape on the video here, but it is this little box right here. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's that little major scale shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 again. But the reality is I never ever use that kind of one shape. I never just go up and down in this one little section. Super helpful. Thinking outside the box is, there's all I really need to know. I'm going from root to root, and I've got all scale degrees in between there. I can go back here to get the 7. And in general, this is such a great little box because I can use it anywhere. So I gotta start here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Guess what? I can use that box again. And so I've got this little reusable box, which I can, and the only difference right here is I'm just about to cross this B rift right here. So whenever you cross that B rift, you have to move. If you're coming from up here, you have to move 1 forward. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 again, and go start here. My same scale box, super helpful scale box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I was playing the same scale box and I wasn't at the rift, it would be here, but because it's at the rift, I just go here. And I'm back at 1 again. So I've gone from 1 here to up here. So this is a G, this is a G, this is a G, and it's connected with that one single shape. So back to 1 again, 1, I'm still using this middle finger. So the way I play is I have a finger for each fret, which is kind of standard way. And you start with the middle finger, use my middle finger on the root note and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1 again. And then I slide up till my root is underneath my middle finger again and do exactly the same box. So that's what I love about this little shape, is that I can use it here, I can use it here, I can use it up here. So I'm going to go from here as far up the fretboard as I can using that shape. So I'm going to start here, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 again, get the 1 underneath my middle finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've got the B rift. So my next one is have to move forward 1 fret, 1 again, and I can slide up till the 1 is underneath my middle finger. Here's my G on the B string. Exactly the same shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm way up here. So I'm way up on the G on the 3rd. It's like this G, but it's slid up as far as it will go. So I can use exactly the same box coming down. So 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and I'm crossing the G string. So instead of going here, I have to go here. And then I start with my pinky, because when I'm up here, right there. So my pinky's right there. 1, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exactly the same shape. That one shape is taking me across the entire fretboard, and I don't have to think about a box, and it's just a small little thing for you to remember. So my biggest beef with the boxes is you had 5 of them to learn, and you had to learn every single shape, whereas you only really need to learn one scale box, which is this. Put it underneath my pinky again. There we go. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and I can easily just slide back to 1, and I'm back at the G again. Okay, so one box and you've covered the entire fretboard here, and it's based on taking the root note with your middle finger and playing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes, and then back to 1 again. Okay, so boxes, if you have to learn every single one, there's 5 of them, it's hard to learn, it's hard to deploy, and so think about just having this one scale shape, this major scale shape, and it repeats all across the fretboard. And so what's really interesting there is that you can get to know this scale shape much, much more than you can kind of trying to learn every single note and every single position. That's the next step. This scale shape can obviously move. So I could be playing a G sharp scale. Same thing. So the scale can move both this way but also up that way. So it's exactly the same scale shape, but it moves both along the fretboard and across the strings. And so you don't have to learn anything else, you just have to remember the B string riff, the horrible B string riff. That's all you have to remember. For me, it's just much, much harder to try and remember all the boxes, the shapes, blah, blah, blah. I just can't. And also it's just boring, whereas this, I just have to remember this one shape. And I've got my intervals in there, I've got my 1, 3, got my 1, 1. So there's lots of kind of things to think about within that shape, which take up a huge amount of my guitar kind of processing space. And so I recommend you kind of think about this shape and all the stuff that's in there, because when you learn a box, you're really trying to just memorize all these positions, where I think it's much more juicy to think about, okay, here's a scale, but what does a scale represent? So it represents the scale degrees, and knowing kind of the scale degrees and where they're sitting under your fingertips is actually much, much more important when you're playing scales. So I know here's my 1, I know right underneath there's my 4, and there's my 5. And so just thinking about, there's my 3, There's my 6. It just helps you when you're playing solos, when you're noodling and thinking about chords. So here's my 1 chord, there's my 2, there's my 2 minor, there's my 3 from that scale shape, so it's a minor, there's my 3 minor, there's my 4 major, 5 major, and I go back to here. This is going to be minor, so I'm going to play a chord shape I don't play that often, but there's my E minor right there. So knowing this tiny little scale box kind of opens up the entire fretboard, makes it super simple because it's just a little morsel of a scale shape. And it repeats. And it repeats and it repeats and it repeats. So that's really helpful. So thinking about what you're playing. So this is the 1, here's my 1. Just thinking about those numbers in there is so much simpler when you just have that one shape to think about. No matter where you're playing it, there's my 1. I know because I've caused the B riff that this 1 is no longer here, it's moved up 1. So thinking about the numbers within your scale shape is so much more productive than just trying to memorize one box which crosses the entire strings here. 2 more things. The pentatonic, it sits right within this scale shape. So the pentatonic is 1, 2, 3, you skip the 4, so you don't play that one. 5, 6, you skip the 7, back to the 1 again. So you've only got 5 notes. And interestingly, they're all on the outside of this shape. Start off with the middle finger for my root, but everything else is on the index finger and the pinky. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. You can do exactly the same pentatonic scale shape, which is based on the one you just learned. So all you're doing is moving a 1 fret forward because of the rift. There we have it. The pentatonic scale shape or the full major scale shape. Pentatonic. Same. So 1 scale shape gives you both the major, and then just by subtracting the 4 and the 7, you get to the pentatonic. And lastly, I'm going to throw in the minor. So the minor, I'm going to start playing, let's play A sharp. The G minor is the relative minor of that scale. It is the 6, it is the minor note from A sharp major, G minor. So there's my starting point, here's my tonic note, here's my 7, and here's my 6. And it uses exactly the same notes. Or I could have gone back into my major pentatonic scale shape and used that. It's exactly the same notes, but you've moved the tonic of the scale to the 6. So here's the 1. There's my 6. Now I'm going to use that as the home note. So I'm going to start there and emphasize it. Same notes that I was just playing. And ending back on the 6 again. So start on the 6. Exactly the same notes, just where you're emphasizing the tonic position of the scale. So here's G. Here's my G major chord, so I'm going to play the G major pentatonic. I started here on the root note. But if I wanted to play the E minor pentatonic, use the same notes but emphasize from the 6. There's me, the more classic way of playing the E minor. just using the open notes. Once you've learned that bare minimum scale shape, you can really use it to kind of branch out. Let's say I'm going to go to D. So I know D on the A, B, C, D. So I can play the D major scale. I want to be able to venture out from that space. So I could stay in the same line. I've gone 1, 2, 3. And I know that underneath my 1 is always my 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why it's really important to kind of just get used to this one shape, because once you get used to that one shape, you can start to see all the connections kind of branching out from that one shape. It's just much harder to try and get a whole box under your fingers and then add the next box under your fingers and then add the next box. Whereas they're all exactly the same shape. There's my D. And I start to know the intervals between. So I know if going from 1 to the 7 is only half a step down. And going from the 4 to the 3, there's my 4 in the scale of D major. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got this 3, 4. I've only got half a step or 1 fret between them. Just like these, the 1 and the 7. So starting to kind of get that feel underneath your fingertips of, okay, I'm on the 1, there's the 7 right underneath, or back half a step. Here's my 4, back half a step is the 3. So now I'm getting to understand that from this root note, my major third, is right there. The takeaway for today is what you should really first learn is the shape of this major scale, because it opens up the entire fretboard around one little shape. The only change is when it crosses the B string and you've got that riff there, and so it kind of slides forward or back depending on whether you're going, it slides forward if you're going down the strings and it slides back if you're coming up. And then the minor scale is exactly the same notes as the major, the relative minor. They're just emphasized from the 6, which is the relative minor scale degree. Just super simple, definitely the way to go. Noodling is for everyone. It's not about being perfect, it's about having fun, exploring your creativity, and discovering the joy of making music. So grab your guitar, find a backing track, and let's start noodling. You might just surprise yourself with what you can create. So what is noodling, and why should you learn how to do it? There are lots of names for playing melody on guitar, including soloing, shredding, taking a lead. And many of these terms they're kind of burdened with connotations of mastery and performance, which can be really kind of off-putting when you first start out. And that's why we prefer to just call it noodling. So up to this point, you've been playing mostly harmony on your guitar. You've been playing chords. Maybe you've been backing a singer, maybe you've been singing yourself, but that's harmony. And that's pretty much the majority of the way people play guitar. You're going to be playing chords, you're going to be backing up a singer, you're going to be part of a band. But the other art would be playing melody on your guitar. So noodling is an opportunity to play single line melodies and explore parts of your guitar. You might be noodling way up here, which you may never ever get to if you're stuck down here, but you could be stuck down here playing open chords and still be able to noodle. So here's a G. I could be noodling just playing that G note, and there's me noodling. That's me just playing 3 notes on a single string. That's noodling. And if you have a backing track, it's just really fun. If you're struggling to put enough time into your guitar, noodling is another way you can actually spend kind of fun time rather than just like, what am I going to do? Do I have to practice? Noodling is really incredibly enjoyable. Like you can just put a backing track on and noodle along, make sure no one's listening, you're just off by yourself, and you can spend half an hour playing your guitar, far longer than you normally would, but
you're just having fun. Here's another distinction about noodling. Noodling is all about improvisation, not playing prescribed chords in a rigid pattern. So you got your chord progression, and you have to do that exactly, or you're going to mess up. You're going to be, frowned upon. But there's nothing really wrong you can do in noodling. Like, obviously you can play a note that's not in the scale. But if you are brazen enough, so this G sharp is not part of the scale, you probably wouldn't be playing a G sharp note. But when you're noodling, you can play that. Even though I might have played it wrong, that G sharp note, if you go back to it and make it a feature, now it becomes a feature of your noodling rather than a wrong note. So there are no wrong notes. And that's kind of the beauty about noodling. You can just have fun, you can be free with it, and as long as you don't feel pressured, you can have fun. Okay, we're going to start noodling. And so the first thing you need to do is get a backing track, which you know the key of, if possible. And then we're going to start noodling over that backing track. So I have a little looping pedal here, so I'm going to just create a quick loop. Okay, so I have a loop going in the background. It happens to be in the key of E. And so the best place to start is with one note. So we're going to start super small. And guess what note we're going to go on? We're going to go on the tonic note of the scale. And so this is in the key of E. So it's going to be based on the scale of E major. And the tonic note is the E. So what you need to do to start noodling is to listen to the music and respond to it. So one note, the tonic note, and I'm just trying to listen to and respond to the music so I can hear there's a rhythm there. And so noodling is kind of responding to the music, hearing the rhythm, and because I only have one note, I don't have to really worry about what note to go to. So it's a great way to start, is just to think about where am I going to play that note? So you could also play it up here. So there I was playing the octave, I was playing the open E. So I'm just playing that one note. And I can obviously do the little vibrato if I want to get like funky. There was my first noodle. What I really would like for you to take away is that there's nothing you can possibly do wrong when you're noodling. I want to take away the fear of failure, and so you should do this where people can't hear you, where there's not anyone around, and you've got time and you're relaxed, and just try to listen to the music that you're playing over and react to it. Because noodling, soloing, shredding, taking a lead, it's all about improvisation. It's all about not following a rigid thing, but just reacting and playing with the music, anticipating where the music is going and playing something. So to start with, because that is kind of frightening, there's a lot to do, just do it on one note. And so that note is going to be the tonic note, and you're going to use that as your rooting note. I don't want to use the word root, but it's your home base, it's the tonic note. So you're always going to go back to that note, and you can play that note wherever you want to play that note, wherever you think it sounds good. So play it wherever you want to play it, wherever you think it sounds good, and really it's really about what you like about the music and what you want to play. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add another note. And the easiest thing to do would be to add a note which is close. And so I might just go up one. Two semitones, but one tone. And this might not sound right, but it's the whole point. You've got lots of time to just so I'm hammering off, I'm pulling off, I'm adding a little vibrato. And then I bent it just there. So I was adding a third note, but you can do whatever you want. So I've gone from one note and it's kind of boring and it probably doesn't work in all those places, but hey, no one's watching, no one's listening, no one cares. And what you're really doing is creating a little feedback loop of what you play, listening to the music, and trying to figure out what sounds good, what you like, because everyone's going to ultimately have your own style. So you could practice somebody else's lick, but all you're doing is kind of learning by rote what they once played and then kept playing over a lot of time till it became a riff that became famous. But the way they came up with it is through noodling. It's through it's through that little bit of improvisation. Be really easy on yourself, really relaxed, and not really worry about where you're going. And if you can reduce the number of variables, so we've started, we're going to choose the tonic note as our home bass, and then we added one note. And so if I'm looking on my decoder, I'm going to turn it to the key of E, and so I can see all my tonic notes. I'm going to hold this up. You can see all the tonic notes, so they're all the places where I can start as home bass. And then what I've been playing is the second degree scale. So I'm playing E right up here because it's actually easy to play noodling on the high string, because even if you get it wrong, it still probably sounds okay. So I'm playing the second degree scale. Then you just have to start adding notes from there. I would stick with one string when you're starting. So don't try and cross strings unless you're feeling confident, but just... If I want to add a third, I could probably go up to, where am I going? I'm going from E to 2 to 3, and they're all spaced a whole tone apart. So if I'm down here, it would be... Whoa, I got a little solo going on there. So I'm playing the one note, the two note, and the three note. But with those three notes, you can get a whole thing going on. You can get on the way there, but you can see I'm just... And with an open E string on that high E, so one note start, go to a second one, add a third, and then just listen to the music and see if you can react to it. So obviously there's a rhythm to the music, there's when the chords come in, and it's kind of figuring out what notes. Back to the E. And so those three notes are part of the pentatonic scale. And so the pentatonic scale is a reduced version of the major scale, and there's only 5 notes. So we've already covered 3 of the potential notes that we could be playing. So I played the full pentatonic scale. We've got 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and then back to 1 again. That's not in the pentatonic scale, but I played it, sorry. So that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1 again. So it's easier when you start playing all of the notes to use a shape. And so we have the pentatonic scale outlined in the green. That's the major scale, and we drop the 4 and the 7. So that's an E. So you notice I just played those kind of blah over the progression. And they all kind of were okay with what was going on. So that's the beauty about the pentatonic scale. It's kind of hard to play a wrong note. So here's my E again, different position, same shape. So I've got this pentatonic shape, and now I've added both strings and more notes. But you could do the same on the bottom. I could go back to my... So there I added the 5, 1, 2, 3, and then the 5. Back here, I'm back at the E again. And so there I was back to just 3 notes. I was on the 1, the 2, and I was bending up to the 3rd. It's much easier to bend when you're higher up here, so. And there I strayed from the path. I added the 4th, because that's part of the major scale, and we were probably playing the 4 at that time. And so as you get more comfortable kind of playing on that single string, you could just try different frets and see if they work. That one obviously doesn't, that's the flat 3rd. There's the 4, which is not part of the pentatonic scale because it typically clashes with more notes. But because I'm playing the 4, it's okay to play it. So knowing tonic note, which is the E, and then slowly adding notes. The 2nd, the 3rd. And then the other close note, which is not in the pentatonic scale, we're back to the major scale, is the 7. So there I'm just playing the 7 and hammering on to the 1. Not part of the pentatonic scale, but I'm noodling. So hopefully you're bored with what I'm doing, but it's kind of fun for me, because that's the beauty about noodling, is it's not about what people are hearing. It's about what you're enjoying, learning a little bit more about your fretboard, a little bit more about scales, like how chords connect. Because obviously 1, 2 isn't in the 1, but the 3 is. So this is part of the E chord. So when we're playing the 1, I can play the 3 no problem. I can always play the 1 because we're in the key of E. Because 1 chords are built with 1, 3, 5, so there's 2, there's my 3. So in the E chord, this is definitely part of the E chord. And this is part of the E chord. So we've done a single string, we've added more notes, but you also have the scale compass here to help you with the scale shape. So again, this is based around the tonic notes, the black dots. So I'm in the key of E. There's this green box has essentially the major scale and the pentatonic scale shown right there. So the next step in your noodling journey would be to take that pentatonic shape, that scale, and play. That's exactly that shape. So it's starting on the E note, which is the tonic note on the A string. And you've got this easy shape. So that's me playing the pentatonic scale. So I'm going to start my loop again. Again, that's not going to set anyone on fire, but you're just learning that shape. You're learning kind of how to get your fingers to do stuff, to whether it's to hammer on with your pinky, whether you could slide up from it. So you could just practice sliding. So I'm going from the E note up to the second. So again, just practicing little things. So practicing a slide, practicing a hammer on. And then when you're coming out of the shape, it gets a little bit harder because you have to use your pinky. So it takes a little bit of work to be able to get your pinky to do the hammer on, especially for some of the bigger, the 3-bar stretches. And so this is noodling. You've got a shape, but the shape is there as a crutch. I would advise you not to get too dependent on that shape, because you want to be able to move out of the shape. So you know this is the one, this is the root, and if you're playing in that shape, you're kind of stuck in this little box. But you could come out of that box and still play the same notes. And then we can do the same shape, but now starting from this root. So the one thing that changes is because of the B rift between the G string and the B string, there's a rift. So there's my E, and so I go to play that same shape. This B forces it to move up one note. So I might play this shape here, but here it's going to be slightly different. I'm going to play essentially the same shape, but the bottom 2 strings are just moved forward by 1 semitone. So, if you make a mistake, try and incorporate it into your noodle so that people just won't even know. So I've got my shape and I not get stuck in it, but it's a great place to start from. And all those notes should work over your basic chord progressions. And I'm making lots of mistakes, unfortunately sharing them with you, but when you're practicing, it's just practice, and the goal is to have fun.
If you want more guitar theory and lessons like this, check out the playlists, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more tutorials like this.